Good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube. And my name is Tom Luongo. December 6th, 2019. We're less than 2 weeks away from the Rise of Skywalker, and we've got a lot to talk about. But we're not going to talk about the Rise of Skywalker, unless you guys really want to. We're going to talk about nasty Nancy Pelosi and her belief that she doesn't hate anybody. She's incapable of that because she was raised Catholic. And we're going to talk about her meltdown the other day at the press conference, yesterday at the press conference, to announce that, yes, they are in fact going to go forward with impeaching Donald Trump. Before we get to that, let's go through the normal stuff. Please retweet, send out, iMessage, whatever you're going to do. Let people know this is what we do every Monday night at 8 p.m. and every Friday night at 8:30. You can follow my work over tomluongo.me as well as moneymarkets.com every Friday. And Strategic Culture whenever I have a chance to write anything for them. And you can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. So, and then if worse comes to worse, and you really like what I have to say, you can always support the channel either through tipping this channel via the Brave browser if you've installed it and you're using it. And if not, then please do so. There's a link down below. The referral code will send a kickback to me, and then you can always support the work over at Patreon. Patreon.com/Gold Goats and Guns, where you can sign up for the Gold Goats and Guns investment news. All right, you guys all know the drill. We've gone through that stuff. Let's get started with the show. Didn't the Catholics invent the Iron Maiden? I don't know. I just know that Steve Harris was a freaking phenomenal bass player. So, even though I'm not a huge Maiden fan. Yeah, let's talk about Pelosi. So, let me tell you something. I was raised Catholic. My mom tried to be a nun, for Christ's sake, right? I mean, she left home and entered the nunnery, and it didn't work out, and then she became a nurse, and she met my dad, and, 4 kids later, and all of that stuff. Well, I was raised Catholic. I've met a lot of Catholic women like Nancy Pelosi. And I can tell you that woman isn't anything close to actually being Catholic. And I found it really funny yesterday when she was called out for her obvious dislike of Donald Trump. And then losing it in public while she's walking off the stage. And what she should have done when the guy asked that question was to just ignore it and move on. But she couldn't do that because he was right. She knew it, and that was that. And so she had to oh, no, I have to be virtue signal now. I have to put you in your place because you're an impudent child. I know that. I know that all too well. Believe me, I saw it in my house. I saw it at catechism school. Monday nights and Sunday mornings at catechism before Mass. I saw it all the time. And it's just this unbelievable self-righteousness and to believe that Catholicism is a sect of Christianity that's not built on hate. You got to be out of your mind. So, and it's funny that the guy, come on, let's tell the truth here, hon. You don't like Trump. You want him gone, and that this isn't really about anything important because you know full well that you don't have anything to impeach him on. But you've been told that you need to go through the impeachment, so now she's got to create this persona. She's got to virtue signal to everybody to let everybody know, you don't cross me. You don't cross me. I thought it very funny at the end of her little 1.5 minute screed that she went, you don't cross me on something like this. Dude, that's the biggest dead giveaway that you're a really angry and vicious person. And I wrote an article this morning about this, and it was funny when I as I was going through it, I'm like, oh, Nancy Pelosi is she's the Speaker of the House version of Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I mean, she's the authority figure. She's the state and all of its terrible guises. She puts on the mask of being reasonable and being and being loving and we're only doing this for in your own best interest and everything else. But you cross me, and I'll fucking destroy you. So it's, you know, as I said this afternoon, she's just Nurse Ratched with Botox at this point. And her brains are so scrambled, and she's so seriously not even like functional at this point, I think, that it's very obvious to me that she might actually be functionally crazy, and that she actually now believes that she's doing, like, she's going to save the world from Donald Trump and from the people who elected him. And that's where we are. I mean, when you couple that with the CNN town hall that I saw on a Paul Joseph Watson post that was linked on Zero Hedge this morning, I grabbed that piece where she said, we have to stop Trump because we're going to lose the planet and we're all going to die. Like, we're at that point where they know their entire narrative, entire worldview, everything is collapsing. Like, you know, Toto's tugging on her leg, and you know, actually at this point, Pelosi is really the Wicked Witch in the process of melting after water's been thrown on her. That's what I saw the other day. You know, she was at that moment of, well, you know, okay, we're going to do this, and she doesn't want to go through this impeachment. She knows this will be bad for the Democratic Party. She's being told to prosecute this, though. She's being told to move this forward. This has nothing to do with her defending the Constitution. This has everything to do with whoever pays her and has her in place. And whoever gives her orders, the orders came down, you will try and impeach Donald Trump. It does not matter, and you will remove him from office. And you will do whatever you have to do to get this done. So it's quite sad, actually, to watch this play itself out, because Pelosi she's almost non-functional at this point, but she has to go through the process. And she also knows that within the Democratic Party itself, and this is something I didn't get to in my article today, but she knows within the Democratic Party itself, she's dealing with a fractious DNC and a fractious Democratic Party. She's dealing with a civil war within her own party, the Cenk Uygur squad, Zach Exley wing, trying to take over the party from within, and is forcing the DNC to move farther and farther left because they don't have anything else to run on. That's their only unique selling proposition at this point. So it's absolutely telling that just a 10-word sentence. Like, come on, please tell us that you just don't like the guy. You just hate Donald. You know, are you impeaching him because you hate Donald Trump? Like, oh no, I don't hate anybody. Like, you're not capable of hating people. Like, your entire worldview is based on hate. Like, it astounds me. And then she went up there and she virtue signaled about children, and I'm like, and this is the woman who marched at the march with the women with pussy hats on their heads to defending the right to murder their unborn children. And every version of that bill, that we have to murder unborn children up until the moment that the woman has a right to abort and murder her child up until the moment it comes out of the womb. And at that point, then we get to put it on welfare and turn them into Democratic voters, right? Like, are you out of your freaking mind? Do you even listen to yourself? She was so triggered by what was said there, because it's so obviously true, that she then had to backpedal into this weird thing about Donald Trump hating children. And that's your entire ideology. As the third wave feminist, you're all about murdering babies. And that's completely un-Catholic. You support abortion, and the fucking Catholics don't even support birth control. As my father said, dude, I had 4 kids on the rhythm method, almost 5 if it wasn't for a miscarriage. Like, it doesn't work. So, like, the very idea that this woman would wrap herself in the false flag of Catholicism to try and debunk the idea that she hates the president is just the most laughable and ridiculous shit I've ever seen from her. I mean, normally Pelosi is like, I mean, she's better than this. But it tells you just how much pressure she's under to do something and to prosecute a policy and implement a policy that she doesn't believe in. She knows this is all about regaining control over the bureaucratic process of the government, and that she is in an existential fight for her version of political reality, which is crumbling around her. Nobody believes this crap anymore. She's looking at the polls. She can see the poll numbers that this is going to destroy the Democratic Party. She knows that Trump is raising money left and right on this, and that the Democrats can't get any traction. This is the only way they can get any decent press at this point from a captured corporate press, because no one's covering and no one gives a shit about the Democratic primaries, because all the candidates are terrible. So it's insane to watch her sink into this level of depravity on the barest minimum, with the barest minimum of pressure put on her. And I've always said that most of these people like Pelosi and Schumer and Merkel and Theresa May and Macron, and before him Hollande, and all these other people, that they've been given, they look invincible because they've been given a big, huge stack of chips. The other guy's got like 3, and the other guy's got 3, and he's barely got like 3 big blinds, and you've got a huge stack of chips. And the table's all tilted that, not only does he have to like throw his chips into the pot, but he has to throw them in such a way that they don't just slide into your pot and you get to keep them. I mean, the whole thing is this terrible metaphor where the table's so tilted in their direction, they look powerful when they're really not, because the game board has been set up in such a way that, they can't lose. It's like, to use a Trump metaphor, they're golfing with a 35 handicap. So it is unbelievable. But she really, truly is like the best version. She's become like the best version of Nurse Ratched. And look at that article. I linked to a really good, really good video of a description of Nurse Ratched as one of the great villains of all time. And she is the state and the system in all its terrible guises that purports to love you and be wanting to take care of you and wanting to protect you, but treats you like a retard and someone who's sick if you don't do what we tell you to do. And that's the point of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, is that the people who are in charge are the insane ones, and the level of violence they're willing to employ to ensure that you don't get out of line is incredibly over the top, and any challenge to their authority is met with the most unbelievable levels of violence and hostility. And so it's truly maddening that people don't get that at this point, and that, like, how divorced are the kids growing up today from our cultural touchstones, that they don't know who Nurse Ratched is. I was reading the comments in that YouTube, and one guy actually had the nerve to say that they should remake One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest today in this, in the aftermath of Me Too culture, and it would very obviously look like Nurse Ratched was the hero of the story because of all these toxic men that she's having to ride herd over. And I was like, I wanted to just like, you unbelievable fucking cuck. I mean, seriously, dude. Like, what the fuck? What kind of mind job or fuck job has your wife done on you just to get a little bit of pussy? I mean, it's terrible. Like, that's not what women want. That's what psychopaths want. And Pelosi is that very definition of toxic femininity. And there's absolutely versions of toxic femininity that exist. We have toxic male archetypes in literature and in stories, and we have toxic female archetypes. Pelosi is definitely wrapping herself now in the toxic, mother archetype, the one that will smother their child and keep it from being able to grow up, constantly have it under control, and with toxic levels of compassion. And that's where we are at this point. The progressive left has become toxically infused with a kind of toxic femininity that is truly warped and dangerous. Because and you can see it at every level of our society at this point. Kids can't get on a freaking bike without wearing arm pads and knee pads and helmets and all this other stuff. Like, I got on a bike with nothing. I had to make sure I didn't hurt myself. But if I did, I fell down, I hurt myself. Well, I hurt myself. My mother would patch me up, and I'd learn my lesson, and we move on with our lives. But there's that moment where you can't protect your children from every potential harm. That's the problem with safe space culture on campus and all of this stuff. They don't ever want to be in an environment where they can't control everything about it, because any idea or any thought or conversation that challenges their worldview is now considered violence. Like, you disagree with me. Well, you're a toxic man, and you need to be silenced. I'm like, no, you need to grow a fucking pair. It's not compassion, North on 60. You're absolutely right. It's warped possession. It's Munchausen syndrome. Absolutely. So it is really quite crazy that 1.5 minutes from Pelosi really was incredibly instructive, because she made the mistake of attacking down. You never do that. She showed incredible weakness on her part. It showed incredible she was thin-skinned and obnoxious, and she just revealed herself as the Wicked Witch of the West. Like, no, I'm going to get your little dog too, Donald. I got you now. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, she was really off her freaking meds. And it was quite scary. And it's not a good look for anybody. And then at the same time, right, these people go after Barron Trump like he's some kind of, like we're gonna drag we're gonna make the woman that did that, the Kaplan. Oh my God, like to think that she was gonna be clever and use a play on words about Donald Trump naming his kid Barron, but he couldn't become a Baron. Like, how fucking tone deaf are you that you think it's acceptable in that kind of setting to go into to attack a 13-year-old boy who's never ever expressed any kind of opinion, and who Trump and Melania both have kept far away from any of this shit, to their credit, by the way. Government asks, how did we get here? It can't be accidental. It's not accidental. We got here because this is what happens when the political order starts to break down, okay? And when we've had a long march through the institutions of the frickin' Marxists, like we've had, and they have been able to have their run of the place for so long, and when we reach the end of the cycle, we've pushed everything as far as we could, and we live in an age of plenty when food as a percentage of disposable income is as small as it's been in 1,000 or 2,000 years. When you're at a point in the society where we've solved a lot of the basic freaking problems up to this point, but now the bills are coming due. But we solved those problems with fake money. We solved those problems with debt. We've pulled that production forward from the future to pay for all this socialist nonsense, literally communist nonsense. But now the bills are coming due, and everybody's fighting over the last vestiges of the corpse. When that happened, that's when the knives come out. That's when people get desperate, and that's when we start fighting over what scraps were left, and that's when the people who've been in charge lose their fucking minds, and now truly have to turn the switch. They go from, we're doing all of this for your own good because we can't trust you with yourself. This is the infantilization of people, has been going on for years, pushing adulthood farther and farther out in time. You can't smoke cigarettes until you're 21. You can't drink until you're 21. But you can drive a car at 16. But you can drive a car at 16, and you can enter the workforce at 16, and you can fight and die for your country at 16. But you can't be trusted to be an adult until you're 25. Like, really? This infantilization of the population, and it has been a plan. It's been part of the process. And, you know, as birth rates fall and children become more precious to people, they tend to, you know, this kind of thing, this kind of toxic, you know, mother archetype will express itself more and more. It just makes sense. But as the political order breaks down, as the societal order breaks down, then people become much more defensive. Conservatives become more defensive, defending their, you know, what came before the old culture, and the progressives become worried that they're going to lose control over their program because they haven't finished their program yet. They haven't enlightened all of us or really just killed us all off, because that's what they'd rather do. That now they've morphed into this very evil scenario, this very evil group of people. Because I've always said that, you know, scratch a progressive hard enough and you'll uncover a fascist every time. They want to be compassionate and solve people's problems and very open, but if you don't listen to them, once they've gotten hold of the reins of power, they're going to use that as a bludgeon to ensure that you do what they tell you you do what they tell you to do, or you're going to take the consequences. And that's the metaphor of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and it's absolutely about the state. It's not just about mental institutions, it's about all forms of enforced control. Stoyanovich says, hey, look, I really think that the left thought that Obama had set the stage for the left's final socialist victory. You're right. He was the globalist tool to win. And they're losing it because they're seeing the possibility of it slipping away. And you're absolutely right. It's a very eloquent way of putting it, while I kind of meander around the point. That is exactly what's going on. When they feel like, when people feel vulnerable, when they see it all slipping away, that's when the knives come out. That's when the anxiety happens, and that's when they're going to fight the hardest. Yeah, Paul Joseph Watson did do a video recently on the infantile cultures related to pop movies and pop culture, and I remember I listened to part of it the other morning. Camille was listening to it, and I was listening to it as I was waking up, and he was making a lot of those points, and he's absolutely right. Like, so many people who are like freaked out about the latest about everything having to do with the latest Star Wars movie, for example. You know, they're all worried that J.J. Abrams is going to make one of the main characters gay or this or that, whatever. It's like, you're responding to the wrong things. You're worried about the wrong things. And moreover, you shouldn't be that invested in this thing. Not when you're an adult. When you're my daughter's age, you shouldn't be invested in these things. Because at 13 or at 12 or at 14 or 15, you're still an unformed human. You're still looking for your place in the world. You're still looking for your identity. That's separate from your parents. That's a very normal, that's what adolescence is all about. That's why young adult fiction is the most important genre of literature. And PJW was absolutely right to like call this out, because grown men shouldn't be triggered over, shouldn't be triggered by Admiral Holdo's hair in The Last Jedi. This shouldn't be. And if they are, they need therapy. Truth be told, they need therapy. These are people who need therapy. They need to grow the fuck up. They need to go find a good woman who will make them better, pump out a couple of kids, become dads, and shoulder some goddamn responsibility. Pelosi, the woman whose own daughter would say this woman would slit your throat and you wouldn't even know you were bleeding, doesn't hate anybody. It's insane that she would even say that in public. Like, she's so ideologically possessed that she would even make that argument in public. Tells you if she truly does believe that stuff. This is a woman who has never truly accepted the fact that she could possibly be doing evil. Not, you know, in Jungian terms, she doesn't accept her shadow. Wise people, adult people, accept the fact that, you know, they're capable of terrible things. Doesn't mean, and that they've even at times done terrible things. Because you've done terrible things doesn't make you, by definition, a terrible person. You learn from those mistakes and you apologize for them and you will make amends for them, which is what we all should strive to do. Then you move forward. But again, I mean, I think it's either Jordan Peterson or some other people make this point about atheists and nihilists, that these are people who cannot, since they haven't integrated their shadow, since they haven't integrated their dark side or accepted the fact that it exists. Ethical vegans, for example, are this way. These ethical vegetarians, these people who can't eat meat because they can't accept the fact that they are going to murder an animal. This is a clear rejection, fundamental rejection of their capacity for evil. By doing that, that also then precludes the possibility of making amends, right? It precludes the possibility of redemption. Explicit, actually, in Pelosi's rant was that she's not capable of hating anybody because she was raised Catholic. She's not capable of that. Well, yeah, you are, Nancy. And that somehow none of Trump's crimes can ever be forgiven because there's no possibility for redemption, because there's no limit to they won't put a limit on what is and is not a crime. There are no limits. You cannot have any limit on their behavior. They accept no limits on their behavior, but they expressly say there is no limit to how much we can limit your behavior. They'll never do this. You listen to these people talk, they'll never do it. It's why they've convinced themselves that it's a mother's right to choose to cut up and hack to pieces a woman's unborn child as it's exiting the womb. This is disgusting. This is infanticide, but they've now convinced themselves that this is righteous. It's disgusting. I've got zero use for it, zero time for it. I'm not saying that abortion should be outlawed. Anarchist libertarian. I don't think the state should be involved in this process. But at the same time, I don't advocate abortion under any circumstances. I'm a realist and understand that it exists, and that's going to happen, and every one of them is a goddamn tragedy in every way. But every murder is a goddamn tragedy in every way. That's not to say that we're all not capable of some terrible acts, because we are. And it's understanding what you're capable of that allows you to then realize, oh wow, I shouldn't do that. I go that route, I know where that's going to wind up. And how many times have I sat here and told you in this live stream over this conversation we've been having over these live streams over the last 3 years, that if I were president, the first thing I would do is I would bomb the poppy fields in Afghanistan, declare all the CIA assets out there traitors, and expect them to be gunned down like dogs. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that's revenge. I do believe in an eye for two eyes and a little bit of scaring. I believe in libertarian justice theory, which is why you should never steal from anyone, because the consequences of stealing should be high enough that it precludes you, it deters you from ever trespassing on someone's rights in the first place. But that's still a justification. It's not a particularly good one. I'm not even sure it's moral. It's logical. I'm not sure it's moral. But that doesn't mean that I'm fit to be president. But at the same time, I would stop all policy in which I did any harm whatsoever, which would mean that the government wouldn't do much under my watch. Tenjin says, I drop leaflets telling the local Afghans to vacate before bombing. I just tell everybody on the campaign trail, this is what I'm going to do when I get in office. So they all knew. Like, look, y'all got 3 months to get, y'all got 2 months to get out of the way, because I'm elected the second Tuesday in November, and I don't become inaugurated until the 20th or so, or the first Monday in January, or third Monday in January, whatever the fuck the day is. I'm like, you guys all know what's going to happen, because I'm going to tell you flat out, this is what we're going to do. Y'all better get out of the way. So, and this is it's a very, very, grasping the ring of power, the brass ring of power, or the gold ring of power in this case, to make the Tolkien reference, is a very dangerous thing. And it reminds you that even the best people cannot be trusted with power. And the fact that Pelosi would be even willing to stand up there and say she's not capable of something like that simply because she was raised Catholic, and we were taught never to hate anybody. Really, the Catholic Church destroyed how many hundreds of thousands of people's lives in the Inquisition? There aren't enough bombs to clear the poppy fields in Afghanistan. So, I'm willing to try. So, right. But this stuff is very important to understand what's being said here. And you look at the way the left is wrapping themselves in this in this moral high ground. And look, the hardcore right isn't much better. The SJW right isn't any better. They're just as triggered and just as insane, saying, "Oh, look, these people are all bad and we're the good guys." You're not the good guys, fucking incels. You're not. You're not any better than these people in terms of your tactics or your strategy or anything else, and certainly not, any more with it than they are, any more self-aware than they are, because you're not. I keep running into these people all the time, and I'm like, guys, seriously, you're man babies. Shut the fuck up. But it is what it is. I got no use whatsoever for man babies. None. Zero. I got no use for male feminists either. Oh, by the way. Because that's feminist, today's feminist. Men who want to see women treated with respect and glory and honor and all that stuff, absolutely. Who want to love, cherish, and protect their women, absolutely. That's what feminism should be. It's not. Modern feminism is just cultural Marxism. Elevating the woman to the state of godhood, and men, and by definition, and by extension, then saying women good, ergo men bad. Again, as always, false dyads. If not A, then B. If you're not a woman, then you must be evil. It's the way this stuff works. So these are all just insane false dyads, and they do them over and over and over again. And I mean, and again, we're right here. What, 2 weeks away? It's just interesting. I was like, we're 2 weeks away from the next Star Wars movie, so we're 35 minutes into this now. I've made my rant. Now we can start talking about some other stuff. And the more I think about this stuff, and I watched the new episode of Mandalorian this afternoon. It was great. Watching this guy become a father to the baby Yoda is really kind of cool. But I watched The Last Jedi again this afternoon, and I watched The Force Awakens the other day, and yada, because I am working on some stuff behind the scenes. I am working on a long form piece. I don't know what it'll be, an ebook or something else, trying to explain what I think is going on here. And so at the end of the day, I can try to organize my arguments for this, because at some point someone has to say what needs to be said, which is that if you're reacting, if everything is politicized, Star Wars, Marvel, this, all this stuff, if everything's politicized and everything has to be seen through this current lens of the hyper-politicization of our culture, because we're living in a chaotic period and we're living in a breakdown period, everything has to exist in that. Then nothing constructive will reach the ears of the people who need to hear it the most. Guys between the age of 30 and my age, from 50, are lost when it comes to Star Wars. But new Star Wars films are not for us. This is the part that they don't like. They're for my daughter. They're for the 12-year-olds and the 13-year-olds. This is the point that Paul Joseph Watson was making. He's like, look, these stories are for children, to help them find their way in the world. I mean, Rey even says that, like, explicitly in The Last Jedi. All this stuff is happening. Is like, I'm just looking for someone to help me find my place in this, in all of this. That's like the statement of adolescence. It's a beautiful statement when especially in the context of the movie and what's happening. She's looking for a teacher. She's grown up as an orphan. She's searching for parental figures. She's a latchkey kid. She's worse than a latchkey kid. She's an abandoned orphan. Like, it's Kylo Ren who's the latchkey kid. He's the Gen X to Boomer Han and Leia. Like, Han and Leia are fucking boomers, and in every way they're they fought their crusade. They never stopped fighting their crusade. They had a kid. They didn't raise it. They didn't prioritize raising the kid. They handed it off to the uncle, who then failed to be the father figure the kid needed. Yada yada yada. And the kid falls, and the kid grows up with no restraints and no boundaries. And look at what we got. We got this toxic, freaking angry adolescent. I think the main reason why a lot of people don't like these movies is because they see they don't like being told that that's who they are. I look at it and go, yeah, we don't want that. That's bad. But, a little different here. I'm not a kid anymore. Abandoned orphan is a very powerful archetype. In the hero's journey, the orphan, the hero has to be an orphan in some way. Almost always they are an orphan. That's part of the reason why the male, the whole MGTOW kind of incel set is so fucking triggered by The Last Jedi, because they were told explicitly that that's not the role men are supposed to play when things are breaking down. And all the women in the movie, all they're trying to do is like get the guys to do right by them, to protect them, to understand that your job now is to protect what we have, because we don't have enough resources to fight what we're fighting. Sometimes the best thing to do is to run away, is to get away from it so we can live to fight another day. And you're not helping the situation. I can tell you that I've had these exact discussions with Camille about what we should do in the face of this overwhelming, I've been having this argument with myself for 15 years. Literally in my own life. I didn't want to have a kid. Right? Because I didn't want to bring a kid into this life. It would be too hard for her, or him or her, and I didn't want to do that. And I didn't want to give up I didn't want them to have leverage over me so that I could not fight them. Because if I had a kid, they'd have a point of leverage over me. That if I wanted to go out in a blaze of glory some way, I think naively. But if I had a kid, they could use the kid against me. And Camille just looked at me and said, dude, that is not constructive. That is not what we should be doing. We should have children and then teach them all the things you just said so that they can grow up and then make the world a better place. That's our job now. You're not the hero who's going to go out and fight the war. That's not your job. Your job is to shepherd the next. You're older now. Your job is to shepherd the next generation. That means actually having one. So let's have a child. Now, of course, was that her biological clock talking? Of course it was. Was she right? Absolutely. Did we try and have a second kid? Yes. Did we? No. Low testosterone actually makes men irritable, angry, and misanthropic. I think angry old men. It does even more nasty things to young men. I know. Freedom Fox, that's a great point. No, by my definition, Kylo Ren is the latchkey kid. He's not the boomer. He's Gen X. He's older than Rey. Rey is the millennial. She's the hero archetype. In the fourth turning flow of the generations, the millennials are the hero archetype. Stoyanovich. They're the last ones in the cycle. We go from artist to prophet, baby boomer. We have the silent generation, who are the artists, prophet generation, who are the baby boomers, the nomad generation, who were raised by the baby boomers. They're the latchkey kids. I'm not a typical Gen X kid. My parents, I was a bit of a latchkey kid in that my parents both had to work, but I also had older siblings who could be. There's always somebody in the house. I wasn't left only to my own devices. As a kid, I was left to myself a lot, right? But that was also, a lot of that was my choice and my personality. And I was far more aspy when I was a kid. I had to learn my way out of it by just brute fucking force and being stubborn. And I'm going to be sociable. And then, the nomads are Gen X, and then the millennials are the hero archetype. Because the hero archetype are the ones that follow the nomads. The nomads are the ones, when they come into political power, they're the ones that tear down the old institutional order. And then the hero archetype is the generation of the one that builds the new one. The GI generation was that in the last cycle. Okay. Well, Star Wars is doing this across 3 different generations. I mean, Luke, Han, and Leia were baby boomers. When you look at the way the story is being constructed right now, they're the baby boomers. Kylo Ren is the latchkey kid, the nomad. And Rey is the hero archetype. She happens to be an abandoned orphan millennial. Hero archetype. That doesn't make her because she never had any parents. There's a difference between not having parents at all and having parents who failed you. And in Kylo Ren's, Ben Solo's story, from his perspective, his parents failed him. Garland reminds us that Pelosi's father was a Baltimore mob boss. I know. Yeah, thank you. So, I don't think we've got the fourth turning. El Vaquero asked the question, what if y'all got the fourth turning wrong and Gen Z is the latest generation in the cycle? No, Gen Z remember, what popular culture is calling Gen Z and what Strauss and Howe are calling the millennial, their breakdowns of the generations are different. The homeland generation, which is what they're calling the one that comes after the millennials. The millennials is a long generation. It goes from 1982 to 2006. Remember, it's not just, it's like certain 20-year periods or whatever. There has to be, with Strauss and Howe, there's always got to be an inciting incident that happens about a year and a half after the change of the generation. In the case of, like, the baby boomers start in 1942, but it's the end of World War II that actually set the culmination of the last. The way you have to read the Forterni to get it. So it's the 2008 financial crisis that is the break point of the next generation, and that sets the beginning of the Homeland generation, which Sophie, by the way, is born in 2006, and my daughter's right there on the cusp. She's one of those. She's one of those, right? So all those 2006 kids are going to be very interesting. Because, well, interesting. One of the things I looked up when I was starting to do some work on, I was adding this stuff into my discussion about The Last Jedi. I got about 10,000 words written on this, by the way. And I noticed that George Lucas was born in 42, boundary year between the two generations, and Walt Disney was born in 1901, also a boundary year. And Walt Disney was on the boundary of the hero versus nomad cycle of the last generations of the last cycle. And so it was interesting that those two guys who were boundary kids became so important to them as storytellers to be obsessed with archetypes and the big stories and the big mythologies and building mythologies. Because Walt Disney, I mean, if you don't think Walt Disney understands archetypal storytelling, he doesn't understand any of this. Like, crazy. Go back and watch fucking Fantasia. Like, if you really want to get it, go watch Fantasia, because there's no dialogue, and you can just see it in the images. Certainly, that last sequence in Fantasia is I remember watching that. Is it the Night on Ball Mountain, or is it? I think it's Night on Ball Mountain. Unfucking believable. Lucas was born. I thought he was born in 42. The real hero archetype, says Greg Rockenberger, who's a huge Palpatine fan, says Sidious is finally returning through hard work, intelligence, and patience to put an end to the corrupt, incompetent Republic and their evil stepchild soldier, slave-using Jedi. Greg, that's really funny, actually. I'm happy to happy to read that comment out loud. I just think it's really interesting. Now, I just swore that Lucas was born in 42. I will check that, but I'm almost positive that he was born in 42. That makes me feel better, says El Vaquero, Tom, that because what I really don't want is for most people consider millennials building the new world. No, the latter half of the millennial generation is really fucked. But going all the way back to kids who were born in like 82 to 84. All right, I'll have to. It may be that I have the timing wrong on I may be misremembering the breakpoints. But thank you. I'll have to make sure I get this right. So I could look it up right now. You can go to fortturning.com and you can look it up right now. I'm just not going to do so. But I absolutely look for this stuff because Scott Colvin says, sorry, late to the show. So the Fortturning in Star Wars, Tom, would you say that Hollywood's getting it wrong? No, I think they're getting it absolutely right. I think Gen X, the boundary points are 64 to 82 or 62 to 82, something like that. Gen Z, again, is not a Strauss and Howe definition. That's a media definition. There are other people doing other generational stuff. Okay? Strauss and Howe model, if my numbers are off, they're off by no more than a year. Okay. You're born in 69, you're quintessential Gen X. I was born in 68. No, Scott, what I was actually saying before you popped in was that they're actually getting it absolutely right, and that most of what certainly the right is arguing about in terms of Disney and the SJW stuff in Star Wars is all thin veneer, and all, in my mind, is all their fear that Disney is destroying Star Wars, as opposed, and it's all veneer stuff. It's all actually just very left brain stuff, when actually the story in 7, 8, and 9, from the more I study it, the more I look at it and I break it down, the story is actually even more reinforcing of traditional gender roles from a social conservative, deep religious human history going back tens of thousands of years than even the original films were. The problem is they're reflective of our chaotic times where definitions, where everything's all wrong. And they're reflective of our society, where women are in positions of power when they shouldn't be. One of the implicit things in The Last Jedi that everybody missed is that when women and children are the ones running, and junior officers are the ones running the fucking show, you've got a problem. Because this is traditionally where men are supposed to rise to the occasion and do the right thing. And you'll notice that at the end of The Last Jedi, when Poe finally gets it and starts to, and leads and sees what's happening, and he says, we need to do this, and Leia says, and everybody who's left turns to Leia and looks at her and she goes, what are you looking at me for? Follow him. She doesn't want that role anymore. And Holdo didn't really want that role either. But Poe wasn't acting like a leader. He was acting like an adolescent male wanting to go blow shit up and thinking that that's how you fight. And no, it's the same problem that Finn had. Finn had to go from not being willing to fight for anything, and he's at a different stage. And Poe's already Poe at the beginning of the movie is where Finn is at the end of the movie, right? Poe only wants to fight for Rey. Finn only wants to fight for Rey. Poe wants to fight for the Resistance and take the fight to them all the time. And it's Poe who goes from wanting to fight for the Resistance to wanting the Resistance to survive and to lead what's left. And Finn who keeps saying, no, he's going out there, he's going to fight Kylo Ren, we need to go help him. Literally just watched the movie like 2 hours ago. I mean, the progression is perfect. The progression is actually really good because Finn is a much younger character. Finn is a boy. He's not even an adolescent when we meet him. He's a boy. Go watch The Force Awakens again. Johnny Boyega's portrayal of Finn is spot on. He's a boy. He's a little boy pining after the head cheerleader. So, Gen X is 61 to 81. Okay, there you go. Mark Hamill was really good in The Last Jedi, and even though he didn't like the part, he nailed it. He nailed everything that Rian Johnson was trying to get him to do. And then when you really watch The Last Jedi carefully, you realize he just gave Luke like the best freaking arc of all time. He really did. It's just that, one of the things I was talking to a friend of mine about this the other night. I said, just because when you're a teenager and you become the hero, and just because Star Wars is no different than, Creed, like the Rocky, all of these stories, right? Rudy, all this stuff. Like, just because you overcome your alcoholic father and the two jobs you got to work and the insufferable rich kid who's on the team to become the lead, to become the head quarterback and lead the team to a championship, and then you overcome all of that and get to bang the head cheerleader, doesn't mean that 10 years later you don't wind up as an insurance salesman. That's the story. That's the reality. And, Luke had his great, unbelievable moment and unbelievable insight that violence wasn't going to solve his problems for him. And he had a moment of weakness. It happens. The stress of everything that was happening was more than he can handle. Just because he was brilliant in that moment doesn't mean that he was a good teacher. And remember what Yoda tells him in that scene in The Last Jedi. You didn't listen to me. Pass on what you have learned. Not only your successes, but your failures. Because to be a good teacher, you have to be willing to accept the fact that you failed. Luke forgot in his pride that you got to tell your students how close you were to turning to the dark side. Because Luke was right there, Return of the Jedi. Beating the crap out of his father. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cuts his hand off. Rolls a 6. Because if you've ever played the D6 role-playing game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Rolls a 6 on a D6. Doesn't get that last dark side point. Doesn't turn. Palpatine makes the mistake of opening up his mouth. Luke throws his lightsaber away. That's the movie, right? It happens. Luke stopped integrating his shadow. Forgot that he had integrated his shadow as a 20-year-old. And he was 40. And that's what he's saying to Rey when he said, because I was Luke Skywalker, a legend. Fucked up. What's an example of an Ultra SJW franchise? Captain Marvel. Frozen. Frozen's terrible. Qui-Gon Jinn, best Jedi in the movies. Absolutely phenomenal. I have a whole section that I'm writing about Qui-Gon Jinn and how the Phantom Menace should have been set up as Qui-Gon's story, where he is the avatar, or the not avatar, but he's the I guess avatar of the adherents of the living force versus the active force, and that Mace Windu should have been that guy, and that the Jedi Council had become and obviously it was all kind of in the movie, but it was all very muddled. He should have really structured this differently. The Phantom Menace should have been completely structured differently to then make the distinction between these two things. Had he done that, the Phantom Menace would have been an amazing fucking movie and would have built so much goodwill that even if he had fucked up the second two films, the first one would have been so good that it wouldn't have mattered. Stoyanovich says, interesting point about Baby Yoda, Tom. Have you noticed how anyone that comes in direct proximity of him strives to be better and act better as a person? Everyone. Everyone falls under the spell of Baby Yoda in Mandalorian. Maybe. Darth Vader is the ultimate boomer, actually. It's very sad. So, okay, boomer. Is the new James Bond going to be pro-Brexit or anti-Brexit? I don't really give a fuck. They're going to make James Bond a woman. They're going to make 007 a woman. Please. See, this was what tells me that British culture is fucked. That they made Doctor Who a woman, now they're going to make James Bond a woman. On their fucking minds. You can't almost argue about Doctor Who. Almost. As long as they don't betray the fundamental conceit of Doctor Who, which is that it's absolutely a libertarian show. Doctor Who never uses violence to solve his problems. And the one time he did use violence to solve his problems, which was between which happened off screen before Chris Eccleston took over in the first season of this iteration of Doctor Who, and how he killed all the Daleks. And that act haunts him. Only time he uses violence. Otherwise, he's always solved his problems in another way. So in many ways, Doctor Who is already kind of amalgam of kind of female style problem solving in a male archetype, which makes him a very interesting character. Frankly, I love that aspect of Doctor Who. But it's even worse. It's a black woman on top of everything else. Yeah, I'm out. I'm not going to watch a female 007. I'm just not. Because you know it's being done for the worst possible reasons. Right? In Star Wars, when they were gestating this story, and Larry Kasdan was sitting down with J.J. Abrams and working through this stuff, and you watch all the behind-the-scenes stuff, it's very obvious that they were working unconsciously and they were backfilling all the story. And what they were doing was projecting forward Han, Luke, and Leia in time and moving everything forward. And it became very obvious. The more that as Camille and I talk about this stuff, and we talk about it all the time. It's very obvious that at some point when they decided that they were going to have a son, that Han and Leia were going to have a son, the next hero had to be a woman. Not just because Disney would love to sell that and it would be better this way and everything else. It's that she has to be a woman. Rey has to be a woman. To be an antipode to Kylo Ren. Now, they could have chosen, see, and the problem here is, and it's in many ways, it's because of everything that's come before it. So, really? See, Scott Colvin says, with respect, I have issues with the current trilogy, which a lot of people do. I see no struggle for the Mary Sue Ray. Really? Because hers is a classic Beauty and the Beast archetype. She failed in The Last Jedi. Horribly. She had no idea what power she had. She had no teacher. She nearly went to the dark side at the end of Force Awakens. She's standing over Kylo Ren after she beats him, having access to the dark side, standing over him in exactly the same pose that Luke was when he beat Darth Vader. And literally, FYI, the Force broke them up because she, the Avatar of Light, was not allowed. It's why the Force Awakens breaks them apart. You have to remember, you can't watch Star Wars without understanding that the Force is an active agent in the story. It is. I'm not saying I'm crazy about it. I'm not saying I particularly like that interpretation of the way like that, but that is Lucas's reality. The Force is an active agent. He introduced this idea in the Phantom Menace with the Virgin Birth. We got to go with it, and because of that, we get into The Last Jedi. She goes to the island, expecting Luke to become her new father figure and teach her and to be the hero that and to teach her how to be a hero. And she's told everything that she does not want to hear. Luke is not going to solve her problem. Her parents aren't. I mean, Rian Johnson talks about this, explicitly. He says, "Look, for Rey as a character, being told that you're royalty, that you're Obi-Wan's daughter, you're this one, that you're some important person's daughter, is exactly what she wants to hear. If she was a Mary Sue, she would have been that. By her being nobody, Rey from nowhere, of no one, that's the hardest thing Rey could have ever heard. And she says it herself when she goes into the cave. And her failure in the cave is thinking that she's going to find out who her parents are. And she won't get any answers. And she says, I've never felt so alone. And that's why then she looks at the entire scenario and thinks, I'm supposed to be the Avatar of Light. I can turn him. That's a classic Beauty and the Beast archetype. That's a classic female archetype. Is the young maiden who's going to turn the beast back into a prince. And she fails. Completely. She fails. She should have died. It's not a Mary Sue. She's powerful because the stakes are higher. Because the concentration of power is higher. There are only these people. And the Force has actively concentrated all of this power into her, Kylo Ren, Snoke, and what's about the Palpatine. That's all we know. That's where we are. That's what the story is. It's very clear. It's very clearly laid out in the movies. That's what the stakes are. I'm not telling you have to like it. I'm telling you that's what the story is. And textually, it works perfectly. Just so you know. But they're not anti-male films. That's the problem, Carl Williams. They're not. Poe and Finn grow up. Luke is given a Jesus Christ death. How much more positive a role model do you want him to be? I mean, you have to have an arc. You have to have an arc, right? I've said this before. They're not anti-male films. They're actually very positive male films. We just happen to see all of these young characters in their formative state. And now we're moving into the third film. Now, if they fuck that, if J.J. Abrams doesn't understand what Rian Johnson has set up from that perspective, we have a problem. And we'll find out in 2 weeks whether they're going to stick the landing on this or not. But from what I can see, what they've done, they put Poe and Finn in a position to become real leaders real shepherds of meth. That's a very, very positive male statement. So her midichlorians are off the chart? Yeah, unfortunately they are. Now he sacrificed himself for everyone. He took on everybody. He took on the responsibility for everyone and made himself into a legend. I mean, what Luke did, and Johnson makes it textual at the end of the movie. We see the kids telling the story of Luke Skywalker again, now becoming an even bigger legend. But he takes on everybody's sins. He takes on Leia's sins, his own sins, everybody else's, sacrifices himself to allow the resistance to escape while not breaking his vow of nonviolence. The whole first half of the Last Jedi, or really from the moment he left until he's there, is just the garden. It's just Luke wandering in the desert for 40 days and then his temptation of the Garden of Gethsemane. It's the same thing. Oh yeah, Carl Williams, cool. Okay, yeah, the Doctor Who, the Ghostbusters, Terminator films, absolutely. All that stuff I agree with completely. That stuff's all terrible. Get woke, go broke. But Star Wars isn't getting woke. You can see the veneer, and it looks woke, but it's not. Absolutely traditional in every way. It's a hard story to swallow because it's reflective of who we are and where we are. And every Star Wars trilogy has come out at a time that reflects the age that we live in. Again, another part of my thesis on all this. I'll continue but we'll talk about it in the live streams, and I'll continue to write about it. So, yeah, unfortunately, guys, like I said, the thing is, and this is the thing that's frustrating. When I look at things like, I have no use. I'll give you a perfect example of one of the things I don't like about the new Star Wars film, and that is that Rey has no female identity in this. She's a very classic. Most of her actions and the way she tries to solve problems are very male. Until she lightsaber, she's going to do this. She's a very she's still she's a guy with tits, right? Sarah Connor is becomes that character. Ellen Ripley. When James Cameron says, I'm going to make an empowering woman film, and he does this with T2, he did it with Aliens and whatnot. All he did was he turned a woman into a guy with and then overlaid a mother archetype on it, so that so we've got the mother of the world willing to fight like hell for her child. Okay, fair. But the way she gets there, and the way she solves her problems, she doesn't solve her problems by negotiation or being clever or avoiding conflict. No, she picks up a gun and starts shooting people. Well, do me a favor, Scott. Watch The Last Jedi again after I've made this point, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's right there. It's all really important. So. I actually want to, I think, in Megazine says, I think you're mansplaining. Well, fair enough. I don't give a shit. I care about this stuff. And I care about it because I think that given all the stuff we talked about, and I'm going to wrap this up now, all the stuff we talked about with Pelosi in the beginning of this live stream, right? That the gender role stuff and the political divide is driving people insane, and it's driving them to break off into their ideological corners and not willing to engage because they're so worried that the things that they love are being fucked with. And I think that there's a real fear of that relative to Disney, it's a fair thing to be worried about, because Disney is they're a very mixed bag under Bob Iger. Yeah. But I don't think that the people who are making these current Star Wars films are in that position. They may personally like want to see all this, you know, they want to see better representation of minorities and all this stuff. That veneer's fine. That doesn't bother me. I don't give a shit about that. As long as they get the deep underlying architecture right, I don't care. Because Star Wars should be a diverse place. It's a big, wide galaxy. We should love the aliens and as much as we love the white people. Classic female heroine, Beauty. Belle from Beauty and the Beast. She's a classic. It's Sleeping Beauty. Watched Moana recently. Moana's a great fucking movie. Dude, seriously, Moana's fantastic. Sayanovich says, hey, you're making points that are opening my mind to the new trilogy movies. This is great. Still not completely so, but you're revealing subtleties I had not considered. Well, good. The whole point of this is to have a conversation. Well, I you know, again, the Canto Bight sequence is problematic in some ways, but at the same time, and again, at the same time, it's also there to teach Finn that, because Finn has a very, again, he's a boy. Finn has a very black and white view of the, he wants to have a very black and white view of the universe because it's easy. Like, he thinks Canto Bight is great until he sees the animal cruelty and the and how they made all their money. And then now they're the bad guys. Right? Now they're this. He goes back and forth. And sure, Rose is not a particularly subtle character. And I'm not saying she's even a great character, but she is trying to make Finn better. It is DJ, actually, who makes Finn a better character. Because DJ is the one who says, oh, by the way, this guy selling weapons to the good guys and the bad guys. But DJ is also the character that Finn would become if Finn had left before the attack on Maz Kanata's place by the First Order. And he had left and gone to the outer rim and run away. He would have wound up being just like DJ. Okay, so it's, you know, at the end of the day, things happen. People do things that they're going to do in movies. You don't have to agree with what they're with what they did. Do I think Rian Johnson is right to trash the casino in the Canto Bight sequence in The Last Jedi? Not really. I don't. Okay, I don't. It's obvious. You even go watch Knives Out. It's obvious that he's got a rich versus poor divide thing going on in his life. Right? This stuff matters to him. But at the same time, he's a strong enough storyteller that he understands that again, he may have something to say on that stuff, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but I do agree with it to a certain extent. People who make their money through ill-gotten means by selling weapons in a war, I'm not a big fan of that. And I don't think anybody really should be either. But what he's saying is, because the ultimate point of The Last Jedi is that violence doesn't solve the problems. It doesn't solve the universe's problems. Because if the galaxy wasn't tired of Leia's war, all shown up to bail the resistance out in the end. So think about that as well. It's all in context of the whole story. Okay. All right. Let's see. Yeah, nuke it for more of it. It's the only way to be sure. So, yeah, I mean, the more I delve into them, the more I think that that these films are absolutely. I think once they're divorced from the time that they were produced in, that's going to be a hard thing for a lot of people to get through. That, you know, movies are a reflection of the time that they're made, right? The context in which art is produced is important. Yeah, I don't know. I Frozen 1 was the original Frozen was a perfect example. I remember Jordan Peterson going ape shit about how angry he was about what they did in Frozen 2, about what he did in Frozen, but he loves all those, but he loves all the other Disney movies because they get their archetypes right. But in Frozen, it was very obvious that it was a third-wave feminist piece of crap. I don't like Monsters Inc., for example. I think Monsters Inc. is like, I like most Pixar movies, but I think Monsters Inc. is a terrible movie because it's just a blatant out and out manipulation of the hero's journey in order to prove to everybody that capitalism is bad, because it's pure Marxism. That fucking movie, it's terrible. On the other side is Zootopia, which turns all of that on its head. Now, it's not a Pixar movie, it's a Disney movie that turns it all on its head, and it's actually the government that is, you know, I mean, Zootopia is like, it's saying that really in many ways it's saying the same fucking things that like A Scanner Darkly is saying by Philip K. Dick. So I'm okay with Zootopia doing that. Now, if it wasn't the government that was doing that, sorry, if it had been some evil corporation that was manipulating the things for their own profit, then it would be Monsters Inc. again. They didn't do that in Zootopia. No, it was the freaking government. Cool. All right. We're at an hour and 15 minutes, and I don't want to talk. I need to stop talking about this because we're going to go run a dungeon of some form or another, I think. So if Thanami's still on and Puck's around somewhere, I'm going to log off now, and we're going to do that. So hope you guys enjoyed it tonight. I am absolutely, we're 2 weeks away from a Star Wars movie, so you can imagine what I'm doing with all of my free time. Because the shit's important to me. And I think it's important to everybody else that we don't get so triggered. This is when I say that don't get so triggered by what you're seeing around that you lose your perspective. I don't think they're doing that with Star Wars. I really don't. Squat Drive Yards did nothing wrong. No, doing what it does. All right, you guys take care. We'll talk soon. Keep your cigar on the ass.